Martha. For 30 years, I thought I was everything to my daughter. I raised her alone, just the two of us through icy Christmases and blistering summers at our little beach house. I always pictured the day she'd step onto that altar, and I'd be in the front row, smiling through tears. Then with one phone call, that picture shattered. "Mom, we already got married. Only the people who really matter were invited. Oh, and send the beach house keys so we can use it for our honeymoon, okay?" In that moment, my heart went cold. I realized I wasn't Mom in her big moment anymore. I was a name on a deed, a homeowner, expected to hand over the keys. If you've ever been pushed to the edges of someone else's happiness by your own flesh and blood, you know that silent kind of pain. But you also know some pains turn into fuel. Fuel to stand up, not to hate, but to reclaim the truth and your self-respect. That's why I want you to stay with me for this story. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, share this episode, and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Because the journey I'm about to tell you isn't just about betrayal. It's about a wedding gift that flipped their entire lives upside down. All right, let's roll back the clock. 2 years ago, the day Lydia brought Ethan home for the very first time. The phone rang at 7 a.m. just as I was pouring my first cup of coffee. Seeing Lydia's name flash on the screen, my heart fluttered. Old habits die hard when your daughter calls. I didn't know that a few seconds later, an entire lifetime of motherhood would crack into pieces. "Mom, we already got married. Only people who really matter were there." I heard every word, each one a cold blade. People who really matter? And me, the one who carried her through fevers, stayed up all night while she learned to read, raised her through winters without a man in the house, didn't matter? I stood there in the kitchen, steam curling from the cup on the table. The house filled with the smell of coffee that somehow suddenly smelled like ash. For years I pictured her in a wedding dress and me in the front row, crying and smiling at the same time. Now I was being informed it was all taken care of, like she was telling me about a new handbag she'd bought. Before I could catch my breath, Lydia lowered her voice, revealing the real point of the call. "By the way, can you send us the keys to the beach house? We thought it would be perfect for our honeymoon." Ah, so that's how it is. No invitation for the wedding, but she needs the keys to the house I paid for with sweat and tears. The house where she learned to swim, ran barefoot in the sand, and once promised she'd get married someday. I closed my eyes and swallowed a bitter laugh. In her eyes, I wasn't Mom anymore. I was a key holder, a convenient property owner. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, my voice so gentle it surprised even me. She probably believed I'd accepted it. But right then, something split open, and under it was a resolve I didn't know I had. After I hung up, I sat for a long time. Morning light spilled through the kitchen window, across the old table where we used to eat pizza and laugh till our sides hurt over silly movies. Now it was just me and the memories, while my daughter was busy with a man I'd never truly trusted. No place for me at the wedding, but they needed me for the honeymoon. The beach house, the one I bought with night shifts at the hospital, had been reduced to a perk in a marriage I wasn't deemed worthy to witness. I sipped the coffee. It was acid bitter, but somewhere inside a quiet flame caught. For years I believed motherhood was unbreakable, a cord nothing could cut. Turns out all it takes is a smooth-talking man, a daughter hungry for love, and a sweet enough line, and anything can be rewritten. I wanted to cry, but tears only blur your vision, and I needed to see, clearly down to the smallest detail, to understand what happened and what I should do next. I stepped onto the porch. The wind moved through the maples, the leaves hissing like a private joke. To outsiders, I'm a 65-year-old mother, gentle, alone. Inside, I know better. I survived a marriage to a cheating husband. I raised a child in lean years and still gave her what she needed. And now, shoved aside like this, I'll survive again. Only this time, I won't just survive. I'll answer back. Cool? Because here's the irony. My daughter didn't need me at her wedding, but she needed me to open the beach house door. And if that door is the only place she'll let me touch her new life, then I'll use that very door to turn everything around. I set the cup down and let out a dry, sea wind kind of laugh. Not happy, wry, salt-bitten. She didn't want me at her wedding, I told myself, but she wanted my house. Interesting. When memory unspooled, I found myself back on an autumn evening 2 years ago, the day Lydia walked through my door with a stranger she introduced in a honey-sweet voice. Mom, this is Ethan. I remember every detail, like a stage play arranged to the inch. Lydia was unusually radiant, her eyes glittering, as if she'd finally found the prince from her childhood stories. And Ethan, he stepped into my house as if it had always belonged to him. A perfectly tailored gray suit, gleaming shoes, a bouquet of red roses, not a single beat out of place. I've met plenty of polite men, doctors, politicians, but this was a different breed of polite. It felt memorized. Every gesture, every smile arrived right on cue. When I invited him to sit at the table, he immediately praised the kitchen, then turned to Lydia and said, just loud enough for me to hear, "Your mother raised a remarkable woman." I should have felt pleased. Instead, a thin wire of alarm began to hum. I'd heard lines like that before, from a different man, the one who left me holding a baby. He'd known how to win a heart with charm, only to crush it once he'd wrung all the worth from it. Over dinner, I served lasagna, Lydia's standing request since she was 12. Ethan took a bite, nodded, and declared it the best he'd ever had. Then he jumped up to clear the table, wash dishes, wipe the counters. Quick, precise, impeccable, so perfect it irritated me. And in the middle of all the niceties, I kept hearing him repeat one phrase, property by the coast. 3 times in one meal. The first time he asked if I still owned the beach house. The second, he said Lydia had told him all about summers there, where family memories are built. The third, he leaned back, smiled, and said, a house like that, priceless. Each time he brought it up, Lydia flushed and tried to redirect, as if she could head off the thoughts he was touching. But I remembered Robert, my ex, had the same habit. Robert never asked about me. He asked about assets, about what could be converted into value. And when there was nothing left to take, he vanished, leaving me and Lydia in a crater of debt and humiliation. Ethan smiled at me with that high-beam grin, blue eyes sparkling like in a commercial. But inside that light, I saw a familiar coldness, the kind you find in men who calculate. I said nothing, just nodded, pretending to accept his compliments. Underneath, my instincts whispered, this man isn't here to build. He's here to claim. After dinner, Lydia pulled me into the kitchen and whispered, Mom, isn't he different? He really gets me. I looked at my daughter, her eyes bright with belief in magic. And as I had so many times before, I scolded myself. Maybe I'm too suspicious. Maybe I'm mixing the ghost of Robert into any man who walks into Lydia's life. But that night, when I saw them out, Ethan hugged me and murmured, You must be proud. I forced a smile. Yes, I was proud. proud I'd raised a strong, smart, self-sufficient woman. But his hug felt less like warmth and more like a handshake sealing a deal. When the door closed, I stood alone in the quiet room, the clock ticking slow and loud. An unnamed warning bell rang in my head. I'd seen this type of man. I'd lived with this type of man, and the price was always paid in tears. Lydia was happy. I was uneasy. I told myself to let time prove me wrong, but deep down I knew I'd just watched the opening scene of a play my daughter couldn't see yet, and Ethan, the stranger with the sunshine smile, was its leading man. I took a sip of the leftover wine, the sting slipping down my throat. I laughed softly, unsure if it was at his finesse or my own helplessness on the sidelines. The laugh died quickly, leaving a long, cold quiet. Because in Ethan's smile, I saw something that didn't belong to him. Something borrowed. A mask worn too long. And as he turned and walked out of my house that night, only one thought remained. Something in his smile felt borrowed, like a mask he forgot to return. Something strange happened after that first dinner. At the start, Lydia still called me every day, chatting about work, co-workers, little nothings that went nowhere. Then the calls began to thin out. From every day to every week, from every week to every month. And eventually, when my phone lit up with her name, I barely recognized her voice. Whenever I asked why, Lydia would force a little smile and say, "Ethan thinks I should focus more on our relationship. He says couples need to put each other first." It sounded sweet, sensible, and it chilled me. A man walks in and suddenly my daughter decides talking to her mother is unnecessary. The next signs arrived fast. One morning I was scrolling Facebook and saw a photo that sank like a stone in my chest. Lydia holding up a diamond ring. The neat caption, "He asked, I said yes. Can't wait to start our forever together." Hundreds of congratulations from friends, co-workers, neighbors, everyone tisk-tisking with delight. Everyone in the loop, except me. I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold beside me. My fingers shook as I hit call. When Lydia picked up, she was fizzing with excitement. "Oh my God, Mom! I was going to call you this morning, I swear, it just happened so fast." I smiled, keeping my voice steady. "Congratulations, sweetheart. Tell me everything." And she did. About the restaurant, the meal, the applause, how Ethan's family immediately started arranging a celebration. I listened, and a deep, blank space opened inside me. When I asked, "So when's the engagement party? Do I need to prepare anything?" Lydia went quiet, then lowered her voice. "Mom, it's just for Ethan's family. His mother has very specific ideas." I managed to laugh, but a crack widened in my chest. Since when did celebrating Lydia's happiness become just for Ethan's family? Since when did I, the only person at her side for 28 years, fall outside the definition of family? In the months that followed, I became a reluctant audience member to a movie I hadn't been invited to. Now and then, Lydia would mention they'd picked flowers, booked a photographer, hired a band. Whenever I offered to help, the answer was always the same. Ethan's handling it, or his mother has connections. That's when I noticed a new habit in the way Lydia spoke. She began every sentence with, "Ethan thinks. Ethan thinks we should have a spring wedding. Ethan thinks we don't need too many guests. Ethan thinks traditions are important." I listened, my heart tightening. My daughter had stopped thinking for herself. She was repeating like a shadow. Every time I heard that phrase, I felt Lydia shrinking, her own voice drowned beneath the gloss of a man who was too smooth by half. One Saturday afternoon, I stumbled on another photo on Instagram. Lydia stood in a bridal shop, glowing, and beside her was a smiling blonde woman, Ethan's mother. I sat in my living room, phone in my hand, my fingers trembling. My daughter tried on wedding dresses, posed for pictures, laughed with joy. And I wasn't there. I wasn't jealous. I just felt myself disappearing from my own child's story. That night I called Lydia. Her voice was sweet but far away. I asked, "Are you sure this is what you want? With Ethan deciding everything? Are you truly happy?" There was a pause. Then Lydia said, "Mom, Ethan knows best. He thinks this is the right way." I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee gone bitter, watching the memory of my little girl's face, her childish grin, the nights she curled up beside me, fade and be replaced by a Lydia I barely knew, speaking in another man's voice. I propped my chin on my hand and sighed. The familiar kitchen felt suddenly cold. A feeling I didn't want to name slipped in anyway. I was losing my daughter. Not because she grew up, but because someone else was taking her, inch by inch, word by word, breath by breath. In that quiet, I heard myself whisper. My daughter was slipping away, and I was losing her to a stranger with perfect hair. The call came on a quiet Tuesday night. I was folding blankets in the hall closet when my phone buzzed. My daughter's name lit the screen, and as always, my heart cinched tight. "Mom, I need to ask you something," Lydia began, her voice a little shaky, but trying to sound calm. "And I need you to be cool about it. Nothing good ever starts with that sentence." I sat on the edge of the bedspread still half pulled. "Go ahead, sweetheart, what is it?" "Ethan's been reading a lot about healthy boundaries in marriage," Lydia said, like she was quoting an article verbatim. "He thinks it's really important that we create independence as a couple, right from the start." A chill ran down my spine. Independence in what way? Lydia drew a long breath and let it out like she'd climbed a hill. "Well, for example, I shouldn't rely on you so much emotionally. Like, when I'm stressed, I usually call you. But Ethan says it would be healthier if I talked to him instead." I stayed quiet. Since when did calling your mother when you're upset become a kind of dependency? This child sobbed in my arms through winter after winter of lonely nights. "And now that's unhealthy. That's," Lydia went on, as if she'd practiced. "And also, Ethan thinks we should spend holidays with his family this year. Just to break the pattern, you know. To prove we're building our own traditions." My fingers dug into the edge of the sheet. All those Christmases, just the two of us by the fireplace, staying in pajamas till noon, hot chocolate and presents. That wasn't a pattern. That was the one thread that held us together after her father walked out. "Anything else?" I asked, my voice dropping. There was a pause, then Lydia said softly, "Actually, yes. Ethan thinks the beach house situation is complicated." I straightened my hand, going stiff. "Complicated how? Mom, you know I always assumed I'd inherit it someday. But Ethan says it puts pressure on us, like, it's not really ours. He can't relax there because technically it's yours. He thinks it might be healthier if we had our own place instead." It sounded like surf roaring in my ears, cold and relentless. That beach house isn't just wood, brick, and a plot of sand. It's Lydia's childhood, where she learned to swim with me cheering on the shore, where we spent long summers roasting marshmallows and counting stars, where at 13 she kissed my cheek and said, "One day, Mom, I'll get married right here, barefoot in the sand, with lights strung between the dunes." I believed her. I kept that house like a treasure, not for me, for her. And now she wanted me to rethink it. "Are you asking me to sign the house over to you?" I asked, my voice rough. "Not exactly. Ethan just thinks it would be less complicated He wants us to build our own memories in our own place. I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. That man didn't just want my daughter. He wanted our history, the pieces I'd salvaged from a broken life. I closed my eyes and pictured Lydia at the shoreline, hair dripping after her first real swim, eyes bright as glass. I heard her laughter braided with the surf, carried on salt wind. Ethan called all of that pressure. I opened my eyes, strangely calm. "I'll think about it," I said. Lydia exhaled with relief, never noticing the storm forming on the other end of the line. "Thank you, Mom. I knew you'd understand." We hung up. The room fell silent again, punctuated only by the tick of the wall clock. I sat there, staring at nothing, my thoughts sharpening like knives. They thought I'd quietly sign the papers, that I was just an old mother they could sideline while they drained my assets, my memories, and my daughter. No, I've been betrayed once, and I survived. I know how to stand back up, and this time I'll stand steadier than ever. I wasn't planning revenge, not yet. I was planning to find out. I would learn who Ethan really was and what he wanted. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, the heat chasing off the chill. In the mirror, I saw a 65-year-old woman with clear, cold eyes, a widow who'd been pushed aside before, but not so easily erased this time. "I wasn't planning revenge," I whispered, lifting the cup to my lips. "Not yet. I was planning research." I was never the type to snoop or play detective, but when my gut says someone's digging a grave for my daughter, I'll dig 10 times deeper than he ever could. After the call about healthy boundaries and beach house pressure, I knew it was time to move. I called an old friend from the force and asked for a referral to a private investigator. A week later, a thick, nicotine-tinged file landed in my hands with Ethan's name stamped across the cover. Page by page, I felt fury and pity twist together for Lydia. Ethan wasn't her destined love. He was a man of habit, a predator running the same script. The first victim was Emma, daughter of a family that owned a restaurant chain. Whirlwind romance, engaged within 6 months. Emma drifted from her family, convinced only Ethan truly understood her. Then her father discovered a massive gambling debt. The wedding was called off, and Ethan vanished overnight, leaving Emma humiliated in front of 100 relatives. Years later, he resurfaced with Sarah, the heiress to a trust fund. Same story, lightning bolt love, bride-to-be cut off from her people, and a flurry of financial documents with Ethan's name creeping in. This time, her 2 brothers caught on and shut it down. Ethan slipped away, smooth as if he'd never existed. I sat in the living room with the table lamp washing the pages in amber light. Every detail cut like a blade. My daughter was just the next mark in a long line of educated, successful women, and most chillingly, women whose families owned real assets. But the file didn't stop there. The investigator hadn't just exhumed Ethan's romantic past. He'd pried open the dark corners of Ethan's work. Ethan always called himself a consultant, that fancy, fuzzy word. Turns out his consulting was cover for a string of murky financial transfers. Money moved through shell companies and landed in accounts tied to a quiet family fund in Miami. Put plainly, Ethan didn't just live off women. He laundered money, funds inherited from his own family's cons. I flipped more pages and found his grandfather's name, a businessman linked to an embezzlement scandal in the 80s. The man moved millions before dying in a suspicious accident. Ethan, the only grandson, was noted in one report as the beneficiary of undisclosed accounts. I leaned back, hands trembling around the dossier. My daughter had fallen for a man who wasn't only a romance grifter. He was the product of a lineage that treated crime like an heirloom. Ethan's image flickered in my mind. The perfect suit, mirror-shined shoes, the sunshine smile. All I saw now was gold dust masking a black swamp. I let out a dry, hollow laugh that echoed through the room. Lydia once asked me, "Mom, don't you think he's different?" Different? Yes. Different in that he wasn't just after my daughter's heart and wallet. He was bringing a whole family tree of rot to the table, ready to make her the next link in a chain of generational fraud. I looked out the window at the yard going dark, wind hissing through the maples. In that moment, I understood. Ethan wasn't alone. He was the polished product of a clan that treats wrongdoing as an inheritance. I set the file down, my eyes hardening. This wasn't just about Lydia anymore. This was a fight with the shadow of a family Ethan carried on his back. He thought he'd chosen the right victim. He'd chosen the wrong victim's mother. I lifted my teacup, steam curled up, warm against my face, and into that mist, I whispered for myself alone. He wasn't just a fraud, he was an heir of fraud. 3 days after I got the investigator's file, Lydia called. I was out in the garden trimming my rose bushes when the phone rang. Her voice on the line sounded unfamiliar and distant, like a receptionist reading a notice. "Mom, I'm calling to let you know. Ethan and I got married yesterday. Just a small ceremony. His family, some close friends." I tightened my grip on the pruning shears, my hand trembling. A wedding. My daughter got married, and I found out after the rest of the world. I forced my voice to stay even. "Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm sure it was beautiful." There was a pause, and then Lydia got to the point. "Oh, and could you send us the keys to the beach house? We're thinking of spending our honeymoon there." I gave a small laugh. Everything boiled down to the keys. The mother wasn't invited, but the mother's house was on the must-have list. I murmured my agreement, but in my head a plan was already taking shape. Not revenge, not yet. A wedding gift, a very particular one, no one would see coming. I spent 2 days organizing the evidence I had, copies of the debts, the shell company registration, the list of offshore accounts, even the old reports on Ethan's grandfather. I placed everything in a black leather folio, the kind attorneys carry into court. Then I wrapped it in elegant silver paper and tied on a white ribbon. From the outside, it looked like a luxe wedding present. Any newlywed couple would be thrilled to open. Finally, I slipped in a handwritten card. Every husband should know his wife's family history. With love, Martha. On Friday morning, I took the package to Lydia and Ethan's apartment and set it by their door. No doorbell, no text. I just left it and walked away, lighter, as if I'd finished a ritual. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Lydia's name lit the screen, but when I picked up, Ethan's shout burst into my ear. "What the hell is wrong with you, you crazy old witch? How dare you send us this garbage?" I set my teacup down and kept my tone calm. "Hello, Ethan. I take it you opened your wedding gift." "Yeah, this isn't funny. This is harassment. I'm calling the police." I smiled, bitter, but at ease. "And what will you tell them? That your mother-in-law gave you public records and newspaper clippings?" On the other end, I heard Lydia sobbing. "Trevor, calm down. Let me talk to her." "Don't, Lydia. She's insane. She's trying to ruin us." I took a sip of tea as if we were discussing the weather. "Ethan, surely you're not upset about me sharing a little family history? I thought you'd appreciate knowing how your grandfather made his fortune." Silence, then a furious bark. "You're lying." But under the anger, I could hear the tremor of panic. I didn't need to argue. The documents would do the talking. Lydia could cry, Ethan could scream, but the truth doesn't stay corked for long. It's like sea salt. The harder you try to cover it, the stronger it lingers. That night I sat alone in the kitchen while rain ticked against the roof, beating time for my thoughts. I remembered Lydia as a child, peeling open birthday presents with trembling hands, cheering over a doll, a picture book, a new dress. And now she'd opened another gift, one that wasn't sweet or pretty, but the cold truth about the man she'd just married. One day she'd understand I didn't send that present to shatter her marriage. I sent it to pull her out of a very old game, one Ethan had practiced on many women before her. I lifted my cup and drank. Warmth spread through me, chasing off the chill of the rain. "Funny thing about truth," I whispered. "It doesn't spoil like flowers. It grows." Sunday morning, I opened the front door and found Lydia curled up on the stoop. Her coat was wrinkled, eyes swollen, hair a tumble like it hadn't seen a brush in days. She looked up, her voice rough. "Mom, tell me everything." I brought her inside, brewed a strong pot of coffee, and set a mug in front of her. We sat at the old wooden table where she used to do homework. Lydia was quiet a long time, turning the cup in her hands, then whispered, "Trevor says you're lying. He says you're jealous, that you're trying to break us apart." I didn't argue. I asked one soft question. "If I'm lying, why is he so afraid?" She looked up. That question slipped a pin through the fog she'd been living in. That afternoon, when Ethan left the house, Lydia searched his laptop. Buried among hundreds of files, she found a password-protected folder, and, as if by design, the password was her birthday, a sweet little cruelty. He used the day she was born to hide the proof of his betrayal. Inside were emails with a man named Marcus Webb. They discussed moving money out of overseas accounts, inheritances, skimmed by Ethan's grandfather. There was even a plan. Marry the heir, then assets become community property. Lydia's name was listed as the ideal target. Hands shaking, she printed copies and came to me. She spread the papers on the table, tears dripping onto the pages. "Mom, it's all true. He planned everything." I took her hand, ice cold. "You've seen it. Now you have to choose who to believe." The next day, Lydia called Emma, the name I'd found in the investigator's file. They talked for hours. When she hung up, Lydia sat staring into the distance. "She told me the same story, Mom. How he isolated her, made her trust only him, then tried to get into her accounts. It's like reading my life in someone else's diary." Emma put her in touch with Sarah, the almost second victim. Sarah's story matched, line for line. 3 women, 3 stories, 1 perpetrator. Lydia covered her face and sobbed, ragged, gut-deep sobs that tore at me. But this time the tears weren't just despair. They were a flood, washing the illusions away. 2 days later, we met with the attorney who'd handled Lydia's father's estate. She frowned as we talked, then looped in an FBI agent who specializes in financial fraud. The agent, Lou, was a woman with a low, steady voice. "We've been watching him for a while. Your evidence could be the last piece." The plan came together fast. When Ethan came back, Lydia would agree to meet and pretend to forgive him. She'd wear a wire. Her only job, get him to admit he knew about the money and the real purpose of the marriage. Lydia went pale. "What if he gets suspicious?" I smiled at her, though a storm was snarling in my chest. "Sweetheart, he still thinks you're the naive girl who fell for his perfect smile. Use that. Let him believe what he wants." Friday arrived faster than I expected. Ethan texted Lydia, "Can we talk? I miss you. I'm ready to come home." She showed me the message, hands trembling. I nodded. "Tell him you miss him too, that you're sorry you doubted him. Make him feel safe." Lydia typed, lips pressed tight. She hit send. Minutes later, his reply, "I'll be there Friday night. Fresh start." All day, I prowled the house like a caged cat. I washed glasses, straightened shelves, watered plants, busy work to drown the steady thrum of fear. I was afraid he'd catch on, afraid Lydia would waver, afraid it would all blow apart. By late afternoon, Agent Lou said the setup was ready. They'd wired Lydia's apartment for audio and planted a hidden camera. The team would stage nearby. "She'll be safe," Lou said. "We'll move the second he confesses." But a mother knows. Nothing is truly safe when your child is sitting across from a predator. Night fell. I sat in the living room with my phone glowing on the table. I couldn't be with Lydia, but any buzz on that screen might change her life. 7:43 p.m. He's here. 8:15 p.m. He brought flowers, acting like nothing happened. 8:52 p.m. He's talking about planning a real honeymoon, asking about my savings account. I swallowed hard, heart pounding like a drum. 9:31 p.m. Got him to admit he knew about the offshore accounts. FBI moving in now. I exhaled, tears spilling before I realized. I dreamed of the moment my daughter slipped free of his teeth. Now it was here, contained in a single line of text. The phone buzzed again. A new message lit the screen. I opened it, and for a heartbeat my chest seized. He's here, and he brought flowers. News traveled faster than I expected. By Monday morning, the local papers were splashing Ethan's face under a blunt headline. "Local man arrested in multi-state fraud scheme." His mugshot had no shine left in it, just a sallow face, vacant eyes, hair in disarray. He wasn't the perfect gentleman Lydia once brought home. He was a criminal, laid bare and cheap. The FBI listed the charges: fraud, money laundering, marriage fraud. They added details about his family's secret slush fund. Those years he lived off consulting were nothing but a curtain over a string of dirty transactions. And when the sentence was read, I watched his world collapse in real time. He got 12 years in federal prison, plus restitution, so steep that when he walks out, he'll have nothing but the clothes on his back. The man who bragged about tailored suits and luxury condos will wear a prison uniform and stare at 4 gray walls. The day Lydia delivered her victim statement, I sat in the back row and watched. She stepped to the podium with her hair pulled back, eyes red but steady. Her voice was slow and sure. He stole not just money, but years of my life. He took my trust, my confidence, my relationship with my own mother. But he forgot one thing. I had a mother who never stopped fighting. The courtroom went silent. I saw Ethan's shoulders twitch. Lydia didn't cry. She stood there, stronger than I had ever seen her, each word cracking the wall he'd built around her. In that moment I knew. My daughter was back. No more Ethan thinks. She was Lydia again. Mine. After court, we walked out into the late afternoon sun. Reporters swarmed, flashes popped, but Lydia came straight to me. She didn't care about cameras or shouted questions. She folded into my arms and held on. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was wrong. About everything. I shut you out. I believed him over you. And you still saved me." I stroked her hair, my hand trembling but warm. "Sweetheart, you saved yourself. I only showed you the truth. The rest, you did on your own." We sat in the car while the chaos churned outside. Lydia turned to me, eyes bright and clear. "Mom, one day, I want a real wedding. Not secret, not stolen, not dictated by anyone else. A wedding where you're there, where we celebrate in the place I always dreamed of. The beach house. I smiled, tears running down my cheeks. I saw the 13-year-old who once promised to marry barefoot in the sand under strings of lights. That dream had been delayed, stained by a con man. Now it was lit again, brighter than ever. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, hugging her tighter. "The beach house is waiting." In the days that followed, Lydia came back to herself. She reconnected with old friends, called me every day like she used to, and joined the civil suit with the other victims to reclaim what Ethan had taken. With every step, I watched her gather up the pieces of her soul. I know the scar from that brief marriage won't vanish overnight, but I also know she learned something etched deep. Real love doesn't need control, isolation, or secrets. And I learned something else. Some battles aren't won with fists, but with patience and the truth. One evening I sat at the window, tea warm in my hands, watching the tide breathe in and out. I remembered setting that gift on her doorstep, Ethan's shout when he opened it, Lydia's tears, and I smiled. Many wedding gifts fade, flowers wilt, cake goes stale, cards get lost in drawers. Mine didn't. It grew roots and spread. "Some wedding gifts fade with time," I whispered. Mine didn't. Mine was the truth, and that's a gift no thief can ever return. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.